Namaste again! Episode 110 of the Scottish Liberty Podcast, live broadcasting to you from China. Just kidding, I'm still in India. And it's not live. In fact, this is an old appearance of mine on the Seeds of Liberty podcast with Jeremy Hengeller from earlier on this year. I dug it up. I liked it. I hope you like it too.
Is your child defiant, independent, annoyingly inquisitive? After a long, hard day of following the rules, who wants to deal with troublesome kids? 49% of children suffer from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Symptoms of ODD include independent thought, rampant creativity, and failure to submit to authority. But now there's a solution. The good people at Pilfer can help you with their time-release, once-daily capsule, Compliacin. Your child won't be able to form his own opinions, let alone express them. It maintains your child's ability to go to a state-run school and perform simple tasks around the house. You won't have to worry about parenting, and the school won't have to deal with your kid asking questions. Compliacin. You'll go from this.
Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do!
To this.
Good morning, Mother. I love going to school. And this week we're learning all about how the government is our federal family and they're here to help us.
Compliacin. Talk to your school psychiatrist and ask for it by name.
Well, I think we've at least got 24 libertarians in Scotland, but what if you find out that if you're surrounded with libertarians, that they're all dicks just like everyone else?
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
There's no hope.
We are just some modern-day abolitionists looking to rid the world of the last vestige of slavery, statism. It's the Seeds of Liberty podcast with Andre, Dave, and Jeremy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 149th episode of the Seeds of Liberty podcast. As always, we are covered by a BIPCOT no government license. This allows reuse by anyone except governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information about this at bipcot.org. All right, so we are back. This is Jeremy. I am joined tonight by Shane. What's going on, my friend?
Hello, I'm going good.
Yeah, right. Dave was supposed to join us tonight, but Dave's not here, man, and we can all do a cheer for that. I'm sorry, just kidding. Love you, buddy. Anyway, so we are back, and we have a very special guest with us today, coming in all the way from Scotland. Jesus Christmas! We have Antony Sammeroff, one of the co-hosts of the Scottish Liberty podcast, and also the author of a wonderful book that I finally got a chance to read, fittingly, of course, Procrastination Annihilation. Antony, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Thank you so much for having me on the Seeds of Liberty, Jeremy, and also Shane. It's really great to join you. Ecstatic. Can't wait to see how we do.
All right, man. Yeah, well, like I said, we're very glad you're here. I've become aware of you, obviously, like many people have, through listening to you on all these different. I had heard the Scottish Liberty podcast mentioned a while back, and I'm like, I really need to check that out because we were discussing a little bit before the show. I'm also a host of the Freedom Fiends, and we had a couple of Scots on the show for a little while who I just missed at the time. And when I found out there was more people over on that side of the pond that were interested in liberty, I'm like, I got to find out more about this. And then, of course, life got in the way. I kind of forgot about it. And then you started popping up on all these shows, and just listening to you, I'm like, we need to talk to this guy. And as luck would have it, you talked to our former co-host, the Neo Quayar, recently, and you reached out to me shortly thereafter, and we tried to set this up. So, yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, like I said, Antony, he does that podcast. He's written this book, which I did just get to read today. I actually read it in between sessions at court. That's a whole nother story. We can get into it another time. Most of them, our fans know my ongoing struggles with that. But I did get to read that, but the other thing I wanted to touch on first that you just made, I guess, public the other day on Facebook is that you're actually coming to town. Well, my town. You're coming to New York in the very near future, and that's pretty exciting because you and I are hopefully going to get a chance to meet up and maybe do another, maybe take an adventure together, or maybe doing another recording together in person, or maybe both. We'll see. That's really super cool, man. So is it? I'm going to let you talk. Believe me. But is this? Have you been to this? I don't know. Have you been to the States before, or have you been to New York before, or is this you just coming over here for the first time?
Well, I have been to the States before. A few years ago, I was there with some family on a holiday, but I haven't gone on my own for over 10 years.
Wow.
I feel like I'm getting old. But I was in New York around the age of 20. I've told you that's over 10 years ago. That's really all you need to know. And yeah, it was cool. It's so cool to think that I'm going back there and on my own. I've been working really hard this year, and people who are like, I've kind of been a little bit of a libertarian podcast whore. Going around all the shows because my book Procrastination Annihilation, which is free to download, by the way, from beyourselfandloveit.com/do-it. It only takes 2 hours to read. And I thought it would be nice I was trying to get this out, and, you know, I work in the personal development sphere. I do coaching and counseling, therapy for people depending on what their needs are. And I was working really hard on just trying to raise my profile, actually, and see if I could find ways of serving more people. And it took a while, but it's paid off. But I felt like now was a good time to do something for me, to use that dreadful old cliche. I noticed that every time that I've gone on a trip in the last few years, it's always been to some personal development retreat, yoga thing, or workshops and things like that, something to work on myself. And I thought it would be nice to do something for leisure. And yeah, it's been just the prospect of going out there and seeing some friends is really excellent. I've had some people reach out to me through the Libertarian Network and ask to meet up, and vice versa. I've asked to meet up with people. So I'm so excited, really. Just it's almost surreal. Yeah, it definitely does seem like an adventure, and I'd be only too happy to meet up with you. Oh, looks like I've got the hiccups. Not perfect for a podcast.
That's all right. Well, we'll let that slide. But yeah,
we'll work around them.
Exactly. Well, yeah, no. I mean, it's always exciting for me. I know. I mean, I can't imagine, because, like I said, in my mind, I've only ever heard of a couple of people coming from your neck of the woods that think like I think like I do.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, like, for me, it's like, oh my God, of course you want to go see other libertarians and other anarchists and stuff, because you don't have a lot of them around you. And I've felt like that for a long time. I'm stuck here in New York, which is obviously not a very libertarian paradise at all. So, I've always felt secluded here. And it's always great to meet other people. I'm actually in the process of moving out of the state eventually. One of these days, I'll finally be allowed to leave. But that's why I was so. It was just weird timing that I saw. Like, you and I had started talking, about trying to get together and record something for the show, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, now I'm coming to New York, and I'm like, holy crap. This is just too perfect, because like now I'm still stuck here. I'm lamenting the fact that I'm not allowed to leave New York yet. Like, if it was up to me, I'd be gone already. I'd already be in the Midwest somewhere, in Indiana. But I'm not. I'm still here, and it's like, well, this is just too great. He's coming to New York. I'm still stuck here. I don't have a job. Let's go do something.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's.
And just by coincidence, I noticed that the Libertarian Party convention for New York starts just when I go to New York, so that's almost too synchronous. I feel like I might need to pop down there for the Saturday and see what it's all about, see if I can meet some people. It just seems like a stroke. It was complete synchronicity. I feel like I'm called there. I don't know what the Libertarian Party is up to now. It seems to have gone in various directions that not everyone is happy with. Well, I mean, to be honest, when Gary Johnson was asked what he thought of Hillary Clinton and responded that she was a wonderful public servant, I think that was pretty much that pretty much did it for me, to be honest. I mean, at this time of history, not to say she's a warmonger and a scumbag, was not only was a pretty big tactical blunder. I know Tom Woods, great supporter of mine, has had me on his show 3 times, despite me being a pretty small fish. Has had his run-ins with the Libertarian Party, and they've some members have said things about him that are regrettable. But do you know what? They can't all be bad, right?
No, you would like to think so.
I mean, at least they're libertarians. At least
kind of.
This is the worry, though. What, because I live in Scotland, where a libertarian is about as popular as a beef burger at a vegan potluck, right? so it's like I'm always reminded of the story Walter Block tells when he said that once he asked Murray Rothbard, how many libertarians do you think there are in the world? And Murray Rothbard was like, I don't know, about 24. Well, I think we've at least got 24 libertarians in Scotland. But what if you find out that if you're surrounded with libertarians, that they're all dicks just like everyone else?
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
There's no hope. There's no hope left. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just kidding.
No, I gotcha. Well, yeah, no, the Libertarian Party, like the national level party, is a mess here. Obviously, I mean, anybody can see that if they pay attention. Because the people are at each other's throats. The current leadership seems to have a penchant for attacking long-standing good people that have a long-standing good tradition either in the party or are supported by people in the party. People like Tom Woods, people like that who
even
nobody
Ron
would question.
Paul, I mean, who's you have to be pretty ballsy to level a criticism at Ron Paul from libertarianism of all people.
Wow.
Exactly.
I don't know about that. We actually have two of our earliest podcasts were almost specifically about him. I think one of them was actually titled Slaying Sacred Pauls, and it was almost a 3-hour episode with our buddy Lou Feen, another Freedom Feeds co-host, where we kind of took apart the great man theory of Ron Paul.
Oh well, we're gonna get into a fight. No, just kidding. Yeah. Well, I mean,
save that for when we meet up. We can get it on video. Maybe we can sell some money. World star.
Pay-per-view, man. Well, okay, I better get down to the gym then. But no, I mean, I'd be interested in hearing that and finding out what the criticisms are.
Oh, sure.
It's always juicy to me when someone this. I think this is one of the things that sometimes differentiates libertarians from most people. It's like, see if we hear something that we don't know, or an argument like that we've not heard before. Someone gives us a clue that one of our positions might be wrong. It's like, oh, that sounds juicy. Like, I'd like to research that. Whereas the average person is like, no, I can't. Information. You can see their minds start locking down and getting defensive, and whatever tactic, anything but to have to change your mind.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance. But with that said, like, I was a big fan of Ron Paul back in 2008, and by 2012. Well, by 2012, he had actually introduced me to libertarianism and voluntarism, and he led me to the door of anarchy. He might not have opened it for me, but at least he brought me to the doorway, and I had to step through it myself.
Yeah, he was definitely an influence on me. I mean, I've been a libertarian for like a decade now, pretty much. That's pretty amazing. Almost a decade, if not quite a decade. I didn't realize how far ahead of the curve I was, but I think I did think that this was the new thing. It's quite embarrassing or sad to see the alt-right appear out of nowhere and suddenly have like shed loads of them and grow much faster than libertarianism. But I think libertarianism, it's a slow burn, but once people become a libertarian, they very rarely go back to being a leftist or someone on the right. It's more like once you get it, you get it. And I think the thing with movements that come out of nowhere, they vanish into nowhere as well. And I think the great thing about libertarianism is it's been a slow burn, but our views are so coherent, and it's such a beautiful way of seeing the world. It's so that that human affairs are harmonious. As if I don't initiate force and you don't initiate force, if we do something voluntarily, we can both enjoy, we can both benefit. Like, that's a much better worldview than, say, the Marxist one, which says human desires are antagonistic based on class lines, for example, or there's lots of ideologies that don't offer much hope in terms of, because they think that human affairs are antagonistic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. And something you said about the fact, this is the whole slow burn thing. I really like that, but it's true. I think it's true that most people, when presented with the ideas of libertarianism, if you can manage to strip away the politics from it and just present the ideas of like non-aggression and voluntary interactions and stuff like that, most people will end up agreeing with you. But then you run into, like Shane mentioned, the cognitive dissonance, and you were talking about like how people just got to put their fingers in their ears when you present ideas versus or when you challenge their ideas. Really, that's what you run into, because a lot of times you can get, if you get like a person, if you could pull a person away from the pack and speak to them on an individual level, and if you can actually manage to have a conversation with them, you find out that most people do agree with these ideas, and that's what I think, at least for me in the beginning, kept pushing me, because it was basically validating everything that I had taken in and started to believe, because it was like, well, yeah, okay, now I'm presenting to this person who obviously thinks the way I used to, and they're seeing the benefits right away. They may not make the full connections, but just the fact that they were like, oh, of course I agree with that. Like, that was a validation for me. It was like, well, I'm definitely on the right track, because all these people are seeing it. Now it's just a matter of how do you actually. Well, I mean, I hate to use the word convince, but you know what I mean. Like, because I'm at the point now where I'm not about trying to change anybody. I mean, back when we started the show and even before that, I was, I preached a lot. And my whole goal was, conversion type things, and I've definitely stepped away from that. I'm much more about trying to lead by example these days. But we were talking a little bit before the show about, doing different podcasts and the fact that there's so many of libertarian podcasts out there, and like competition and, numbers and who's actually listening, type of thing. And for me, the one reason that I do keep doing this show, even though, I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, so it's not like I'm letting out company secrets or anything, but like, we took a hit numbers wise last year, and it's completely our fault. Like, the three of us got lazy. We're not blaming Shane. Shane wasn't here yet here, so it's not your fault, Shane. But Dave, Andre, and I, we dropped the ball, and so it's our fault. But the reason that I kept pushing forward, even if the numbers dropped even further, for me, I keep doing it because I've been lucky enough that at least every month or two, I get reminded that I am making a dent somewhere, because every month or two, I find somebody who I've never talked to, never heard from, all of a sudden contacts me and is like, "Hey, I heard the show and blah blah blah, and I just found your show and I really dig it." It's like, holy crap! Like, we're still like, and they speak about specific points I made, and a number of people have actually said if they're going to count anybody as their red pill, like, it's me. And like, wow,
that's excellent.
Yeah, like, to hear that from anybody is insane. Like, and it's not in an egotistical way for me. It's just like, holy shit, like, what we're doing actually matters. It may not matter to a whole hell of a lot of people right now, but it matters to somebody, and it's making a difference. And Shane, for example, he's talked about this before. He started talking about it earlier, that some of us were already doing these things when he came along to us, and through listening to Danilo, our former co-host, and the stuff that we were doing at the Seeds of Liberty, it kind of helped push him along too. The next guest we actually have lined up after we do this show is a returning guest from us, one of our original fans, who came to us and reached out and was like, "Holy crap!
Nice.
Like I'm an anarchist now, thanks to you guys, basically." And even better, her mother is now an anarchist because of us, and I think her mom's an even bigger fan than she is, which is awesome. But like I get and then people like that, people who have come to me in the past that I'm still friends with, like I've become friends with now. Like every once in a while, I get reminded of these stories. It's like, yeah, man. I mean, we could just be, blowing smoke most of the time, or just like yapping to hear ourselves yap, but somebody's listening and it's making an impact. And for me, that's why I keep doing it, because obviously you don't make money in this fucking game. Anybody who thinks they can make money in the podcasting game in general, but specifically the libertarian podcasting game, unless your name is Tom Woods, you're gonna have a really hard time monetizing this shit.
Yeah, and by the way, that's just in a manner of speaking, please don't go out and change your name to Tom Woods and then start a libertarian podcast, because that's just not going to work. There isn't really enough space in the sphere for two.
Well, he is anti-IP. I'd like to see how he would deal with that, though.
Yeah. But as Jeremy said, this show was an influence on me, and former co-host of this show, Danilo Cuellar, who you were just on his other podcast, Peaceful Anarchism, he was my red pill. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yes, and Danilo, I mean, he's a great guy. I've been on his show twice, and he's got such a wonderful energy and attitude about him. He's usually got a great big smile on his face. He loves the peaceful part of peaceful anarchism, the voluntarist principle. When I was on the Tom Woods show, I think it was my third appearance. I'm not bragging or anything like that. I just mean that he left me a voice message a couple of days afterwards going, like, so excited. "Oh man, I'm so happy for you. So great to hear you on there again." Like, who the hell does that? Like, I can't. I'll have to have you on my show again. And it wasn't that long since he'd put my last appearance with him up. So very great guy, and I can tell why. People would be red pilled by him, so to speak. He's got quite an infectious energy. And it's thanks to him that I got speaking to you, Jeremy. So,
yes.
So very good. He's been very good fortune for me and for us. So yeah, great. I mean, you never know. I've got the best listened podcast I've done is called "Only Capitalism Can Save the Planet, Socialism Will Destroy the Earth," or something like that. You can find it on YouTube. And that has been the subject of many a message to me. Like, people have said, this is the best thing, this is the best libertarian thing on environmentalism yet. But I've got a few other presentations that I've done that I'm really proud of. One was more recent. It's called Why Markets Work, Public versus Private. That's also on YouTube. Oh man, sorry about that.
Oh geez, see, I made fun of Dave. I made fun of Dave a bunch before, but the one thing he always does is he is the one who always yells before we start the show, "Phone's on vibrate, everybody."
Right, and it's so funny because I unplugged it from the wall earlier on today, and for some reason I stupidly put it back in. Anyway, whoever it is can wait. The world can't wait for liberty, though, so that's why we've got to crack on.
Exactly.
Amen.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously, we're kissing Danilo's butt a little bit, but yeah, he's a great guy, but he's a great example of that, of, just going out and doing the same, just keep doing it, and people will flock to you because of, the way you present the message. So yeah, that's, like I said, for me, that's why we keep doing it over here. And that's why I continue. I mean, I joke about the fact that I'm on pretty much every podcast these days because I do a lot of them. I just happen to, I happen to have friends now that I've made because of all the different shows that I've done. But I mean, I also have fun doing it because heck, I actually want to get into this because it's related to stuff you talk about in your book. But I have found that I really like sitting behind a microphone, and I would I used to be a writer, and I got away from that a long time ago, and I kept saying I was going to get myself back into it. And then once Dave originally asked me to do the podcast all those years ago, I had no experience in that or anything. He's just like, hey, you want to do a podcast with me? And I was like, all right, we'll figure this out as we go. And we did. And, once I started doing that, and then once I got asked to be on the Freedom Fiends, and then I was on the radio regularly, it was like, I found less and less desire to write because it was just so much easier for me. Instead of taking the time to like write something down and like think about and then look at it and try to edit it in my head and think if I can improve it and stuff like that. It's like, well, hell, I could just sit in front of a microphone and talk and then, cut out the parts I don't want and keep everything else. And it's so much easier. So why don't I do that? So that's the mode I've been in for the past couple of years. And it's been a struggle to actually try to get back to writing, which I've been trying really hard to do recently. But after reading your book today, I am now even more inspired to get back into it. And I'm definitely going to, I read it quickly today, and you're right, it definitely takes 2 hours or less to read because I managed to finish it off in an hour 45 or something while sitting in my car waiting for court sessions to come up. And I definitely want to read it again because I want to try. I want to follow some of the the tips that you put in there and some of the strategies that you suggest people can try. I definitely want to write all those down and actually try to follow through with those. But the writing thing specifically, because I know you were writing it as a more of a general thing, the whole procrastination, like whatever you're trying to do, whether it's writing, whether it's music, whether it's whatever you want to do that you're not doing, but you kept mentioning writing because that's what you do. I kept connecting with that because I was like, God damn it, man, this is the way I feel. Because I love yakking on the microphone. And the one thing I've been told my entire life, no matter how much people praised me or hated me for whatever I was doing, I was always told that I had that voice. Like, you should be on radio one day. I was always told that. I even went farther than that. I had multiple times in my life, I had people ask me if I had ever considered being a phone. Well, my great grandmother used to ask me why I wasn't a phone operator. She didn't understand that phone operators didn't really exist in the way they did back in her day. Number one. But besides her, I was also asked multiple times if I had ever considered being a sex phone operator because of my voice. Unfortunately, that was, I think, almost every time it was by a very older woman, like one of my friend's grandmothers. So it was kind of creepy at the same time, but I was always told I had the voice, so I should use it. So like I said, it's just easier for me to do that. But I really want to get back into the writing thing. And that's why one of the things I took away right away from your book was the whole, how to get over this procrastination thing, because I told you beforehand, I obviously needed this book. Like you talk about it, that you wrote it, if somebody had written this for you 10 years before that, you probably would have been in much better shape.
No question.
Yeah, me too. Cause you joke about the whole thing about being, since you were out here last, it's been, at least 10 years, and that's as far as you go. I mean, I don't have a problem admitting it. Shane and I are kind of old fogies. We're both on the other side of 40 at this point. I've been procrastinating on stuff for way too long. So reading that right away, I connected with the thing about the writing specifically, because I was like, yeah, why don't I do that? Why don't I just write a couple minutes a day and just get in this habit? Because for some reason that just always slipped my mind to do that. It's always exactly what you described, that it's, you put this daunting task in front of you and it's like, well, I can never finish that, or I'm probably not going to finish that, so why even bother starting?
Right, yeah, there's lots of mindsets that I talk about in the book, and as I say, if you're listening at home, beyourselfandloveit.com/do it, download it. You can even send it to your friends. It's a free book. The book, it's, as you said, it takes maybe 2 hours to read max, and if you're a slow reader, maybe that's fine. But it's quite dense in the sense that it's all killer, no filler. It's not flabby. Don't get me wrong; it's not easy. It's not a difficult read either. It's not an academic textbook. I worked really hard to write it as though I was just having a chat with you. And most of the time spent writing the book was simplifying the passages that were a bit too cerebral to make them more and more chatty, adding in some jokes and things like that. And yet I think reading it twice is a great idea. If you love it, keep on reading it as long as you're a procrastinator, a few pages here, a few pages there, because different elements of the book will appeal to you at different times. You'll definitely get some takeaways there. If there is one feedback that I've had on the book the most consistently, it's this. Reading your book is like you read my mind. so many people have emailed me or messaged me on Facebook saying, "Oh my God, like reading this passage is like you read my mind," and that is the best compliment ever. It's very practical. It's a how-to book. It's not. I really don't like it in the self-help sphere where they pad things out with tons of philosophy and conceptual information. It's like, give me the goods, buddy. Give me the goods. So my book is like really just the goods. It's a very practical book to help you become less and less procrastinatory over time. The book doesn't promise, like, it's not a miracle. It's not going to take you from being a chronic procrastinator today to being incredibly productive once you've finished the book. But I think that's really its strength because it's got very realistic goals, which is if you implement the techniques that I teach in my book, Procrastination Annihilation, over a period of time, you will notice that you're becoming less and less procrastinatory and more productive. And you will notice a difference in a matter of weeks. You won't be cured of procrastination in a matter of weeks, but you will be more productive in a matter of weeks. So, it's. I had something to say on that point, but I forgot what. Yeah, so that's great because that's realistic. You can believe in that, and I know that it works. Why? Because the book teaches the method that I personally use to overcome procrastination. And I'm a productive guy. You know, I've finished another short book since releasing that in January, and I'm just waiting to get, you know, a foreword written and things like that before I put that out. And like, I've got more stuff to finish, but I used to sweat it. I used to think, oh, when am I going to have, how am I going to get to write? And like, it was a nightmare trying to motivate myself to write. Now I'm taking a break, but if I took a break before I'd had this personal transformation, I'd never get started again. Whereas now it's like, I'm cool taking a break because I know when the time's right, I can get back to writing with relative ease compared to what it was before. So yeah, I definitely... You're right. If you're into writing, you definitely especially want to download it because you'll definitely see your experience reflected in mine. But whatever it is, like everyone could benefit from being a little bit more productive. So definitely recommend it. BeYourselfInLoveIt.com/do-it. That is the link to download it, and that's the pitch.
Yes.
Also, in the book, there's a link. There at the end there's links to a bunch of podcasts where I talk about overcoming procrastination and increasing productivity. And so if you're more of a listener than a reader, there's links at the end of the book to resources that you can listen to instead, where I share many of the ideas in the book.
Yeah, I too could actually relate to the things you said in the book as if you were reading my mind as well. I was raised in a family that kind of instilled me with a lot of bad habits, and it's these habits that I've learned from friends and family that have kind of helped cause me to be a procrastinator. And I really liked how you talked about developing good habits to work for you instead of keeping the bad habits that work against you.
Well, thank you. Would you like to give any examples of the sort of bad habits you think that you picked up?
Well, checking social media first thing in the morning. That's one thing I tend to do, is because I know social media goes on 24/7 and there's a lot of notifications that pile up while you're sleeping. And I do tend to check first thing in the morning while I'm still in bed. And that kind of slows me. It causes me to delay getting out of bed and starting my day. And I think what I'm going to start doing is keeping a dream journal and doing my meditation and yoga before I get on social media.
I love that. What I want to do when I first wake up, this is an example of learning to work with yourself instead of like trying to shoehorn or force yourself into things. Ideally, when I wake up, I want to do my meditation and breathing exercises right away. But I noticed that because I didn't want to commit to doing that for 25 minutes or however long it takes, 20 to 25 minutes, I would just lie in bed and roll around, and maybe I would check my social media as well. But there's other things I want to do in the morning as well. So I thought, well, look, if I'm not in the mood to do my meditation as soon as I wake up, maybe I should try something else. And there's something that I'm into. It's called, people can look it up if they're interested, trauma release exercises. You can look it up on YouTube. I'm a believer. I think practicing these exercises is very good for our mental health. And that just involves a little bit of physical exertion, but not very much. And I found that what I could do is I could get out of my bed and lie down on the floor and practice those exercises for 10 minutes, and that would wake me up. And then I'd be ready to do my meditation. Another thing you could do is read first, then do you. So this is, I know not everyone listening wants to meditate or do yoga, but this is just a really great example of finding ways to work with yourself and make things easy. I have an example in the book which I use, which is, many years ago, I read a book called The Artist's Way, and one of the things the author recommends is that you write 3 pages a day in the morning. And I always wanted to do this, but I never had the willpower to do it. And somewhere along the line, I realized that I could journal anytime. And I'm sorry that I learned this so late, because journaling is such important practice for me. It really helps me get clear in my head and ready to take on the day. And I just started journaling in the afternoon or in the evening or just before bed, just to build the habit. Now, once I had the habit, I could move it to doing it in the morning, because I'm making it easy for myself instead of doing, because the morning was the worst time of the day for me. Like I didn't feel well rested, drowsy. I didn't have very much willpower, etc. It was only late afternoon, evening I was coming alive in that period of time. What you need to do is use a ramp, make things easy for yourself. And the book has a series of suggestions for ramps that you can put into practice in day-to-day life to make what is difficult for you today slightly more easy 2 weeks from now, very much more easy 4 weeks from now, and so on until that's just routine. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I love doing every day, and one of the easiest things to do now is to do my 3 pages of journaling. I look forward to it. I anticipate good outcomes for it. That wasn't always the case. There was a time when I found that really difficult. And this is how I'm able to write the book with authority, because I'm a changed man. Things that I used to find very difficult, I find relatively easy. And there's other things that I still find difficult, but I'm optimistic that one day they'll be a lot more easy than they are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like the part about first thing in the morning, not getting into that passive receptive mode, because then you can carry that on throughout the day. If you start doing things that are productive, then your day ends up being more productive as well.
Yeah.
I can't say it better than you said it. So that's about, it's great to do something proactive before watching any YouTubes or listening to any podcasts or checking your Facebook notifications, because those things will put you in a passive receptive state. If you want to be productive, go out for a walk, write 100 words, do something generative, do something that is an active thing. Then once you're in the active state, you can take a break doing something passive, and after your break you'll go back into the active state. If you start with a passive state, I find it tends to carry through the day.
Yeah, I find that if I've done a couple of things like my dream journal and meditate and then make breakfast, then I can check social media as I enjoy my breakfast.
Right and enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, picking back up on the whole idea of, well, obviously, I definitely need to do.
You still here, Jeremy?
Hello? Oh, did I not?
Jeremy?
Hello, did I not unmute myself? I'm sorry. I'm looking at the recording and my voice is still being recorded. I'm going, why can't they hear me? I'm being picked up. I don't understand. What I was trying to say to you guys was that the whole Facebook thing in the morning and the social media and stuff, like that's one of my worst habits, and I really do need to get out of that. But the whole idea, picking back up on what people, what you said is the most common thing you hear about this, the feedback you get. And Shane said the same thing. When I kept hearing you say that on these different interviews, that people kept telling you, oh, like you read my mind, like in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh yeah, most of these people are probably just blowing smoke, just kissing his butt or whatever. And then like I read it and I'm like, I'm smacking myself as I'm reading. I go, holy crap! It's like, how did he do this? It's scary because like I said, whether it was you describing your own experiences, or just talking in general about what most procrastinators go through, every point I'm like, fuck, that's really what it is. This is really what I'm doing. Like, why don't I get over this? I'm an idiot. And the habit forming thing, I definitely need to get back into, because I obviously most of the habits I have are horrible, and you hit on pretty much all of mine in the book at some point. Like the video game thing, I've largely stayed away from games since my kid, after my kids turned 1 and they started to be more active and actually, be little humans and do things. I stopped playing games altogether for years, and I've only slowly gotten back into it. And I'm definitely nowhere near as addicted as I used to be. But you mentioned a lot of these things in there, and I kept reading them and going, damn, yeah, I haven't thought about it on this level, but it really is. Like, even the point of, when you're talking about, doing all these things and setting up all these habits for yourself. And obviously, starting slowly, which is another thing I really appreciated about it, was, you mentioned it before, the realistic goals, like that popped up multiple times in the book. And they're just like, obviously if you set more realistic goals for yourself, it's much easier to obtain them. And, some people would think that it's a cop out. I think you even said this at one point, wrote this at one point, that you would think it's a cop out, but no, you're building your confidence, because you have to, if you've spent a life of mostly bad habits, in order to reverse that, you have to first be confident that you can actually do these things. Because if you don't, then you automatically fall back into the procrastinator's motto, which is, if I can't do it right away, then why do it at all? It's like, I'll just get to it later. Yeah, I'll just get to it later. And obviously you got to get on the ball and do that stuff. So, but like I said, so many things just jumped out at me right away, because I'm like, damn, man, people weren't kidding. It really was like you were maybe all of us are just like horribly screwed up the same exact way, and you were just able to pick up on that. But like I said, most of the bad habits that you described, I could immediately point to. Oh yeah, I definitely do that. And while I'm not I've never really tried I've tried meditation, and I never got very far with it. So it's another thing that I gave up on. It's like, oh, I'll figure that out later, and never got back to it. I've never really desired to get back to it necessarily, but yoga, that's something I used to do, and I've been saying I'm going to get back into it, and I've been finding every excuse in the book recently to not get back into it. Mainly it's like, oh, once I move out and once I get to my new home and we get set up there, then I'm going to start my routines and then I'll be good. But reading your book was a wake-up call once again to be like, you're an idiot. Why do that? All you're doing is pushing it off again, which means by the time you actually get there, life is going to keep happening that entire time. So now you're going to have another month, 2, 3, whatever, how many months it is, of more problems to deal with on top of what you were already dealing with that was causing you to put it off in the first place. So I'm immediately if it wasn't for the fact that I got home with barely enough time to try to record a short video and then hop on with you guys, I was about to jump out of my suit and start doing yoga as soon as I got home. I was like, I got to do it. I got to do it. So I think I'm definitely going to try to put on, the one yoga I find I really like is, I don't know if you guys, I think Shane, you might've heard of it. I don't know if you have, Antony. It's the DDP yoga. The former wrestler Diamond Dallas Page, he made this yoga thing that's designed for people who have injuries.
Oh, excellent.
So it's, I have a bunch of back issues and stuff like that, and knee issues. So it was because it was designed for him when they thought he was going to have to stop wrestling years ago because he had messed up his back so bad. And he basically created this program that got him back wrestling for professional wrestling for another 10, 15 years. I think after that was insane. But yeah, I'm going to throw on the video tonight and do some. You've inspired me that much that I'm actually going to do some yoga tonight, my man.
Well, that's excellent. I mean, obviously the point of the book is to help people. So anyone who reads it and does something practical, puts it into action, that is the fulfillment of my goals. So I deeply appreciate that it touched you. And and it has touched people. The feedback has been good. People will enjoy it. beyourselfinloveit.com/do-it. That's where you can download it for free.
Yes, and of course we will put that show note in the links for any, that link in the show notes rather, for anybody who didn't catch that when he threw that out there. I know I got razzed on one of my other solo episodes because I had a guest who kept throwing out their link too, and I didn't care. I'm like, go for it. It just makes it easier on me. I don't have to say anything about it.
Right.
But you definitely should. I mean, this is not just. I mean, I said this to you before we started the show. We're gonna sound like we're blowing smoke up your rear end here, but we're really not. Like, I'm honestly not, and I don't think Shane is either. Like, it really hit home, man, and I'm definitely inspired because, like I said, I connected with you, and that's another reason I'm so psyched to hope for the chance for us to hopefully meet up and hang out while you're here, because I found a lot of connections with you right away that I'm just like, holy crap, like we have a lot in common, or at least your former self and me have a lot in common. I strive to be more like, I know you haven't totally transformed, but you know what I mean? Like I would probably I strive to be more like the current version of you, but I see so many of the similarities, and I'm like, and it does, like, part of me reading the book was like, well, like, again, smacking myself in the head. It's like, well, yeah, some of these things are like, you would think they're just common sense, but I've long lost them and like forgotten about them. And like, when you think about it, it's just like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. Why wouldn't I do that? And especially, we were talking about the whole libertarianism thing earlier, and how it's, the most consistent position. And of course, with that comes the whole logic thing, which, the libertarians are supposed to be known for, about how they think everything out logically. It's like, well, yeah, I consider myself a very logical person, and I try to make all of my arguments for anything I am for or against, based from a logical position. But when it comes to my own personal life, I've thrown that completely out the window because I wasn't just thinking these things through. And sometimes it just takes somebody, working their butt off to write a book like this, to condense everything into this short, because it's only the whole book's only 75 pages. But you're not kidding. You really do pack a lot into that short amount of space. And it's really killer stuff. And that's why I said I was picking on you a little bit about doing the link constantly, but I definitely encourage other people to read this. I hope other people do, because I know I am definitely going to get my butt in gear because of this. And I'm one of the worst procrastinators I know. And I know plenty of other people out there that have the same issues. So get on it, damn it.
Yeah, I too found the material in the book very relatable. And also, I used to be a gamer, and I was particularly interested at the Habitica link that you talked about. And I'm actually looking forward to signing up and checking that out as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone who would like to go to habitica.com, it's free, and I promote it in the book. I've not been paid or anything like that, but it's just helped me so much that I felt like I should repay the favor. It's a great little app or program where you can put in the things you want to do every day and tick them off every day. It's a habit tracker, and it's got some other features as well that I'm sure you'll discover. But I think the main problem for people is they think they should be better than they are, or think they should be further along than they are. So if I can't, let's just write for 2 hours a day, then there's something wrong with me. My book is about taking your cues from reality, not trying to impose your vision of what should reality be like upon reality. It says, take a realistic assessment of where you're at now and do something that's within your capability. And if you do that, your self-respect will increase, and you'll also be taking your willpower to the gym. And over time, you build these things into habits, and they become easier and easier over time. Not overnight, over time. And what I like about it, as I said before, it's all about helping you coach yourself, helping you find out where you're at and take step, as you say, logically, one step in the right direction. One positive action is better than 0 positive actions. And what's more, one action does not create a routine, but every routine begins with one action. So there's always things that you can do to be improving, and you can take them at your own pace. It's not about cracking a whip at yourself, and if that worked, there wouldn't be any procrastinators left, because most procrastinators know very well how to hate on themselves and give themselves crap for not doing more. So that method of giving yourself crap doesn't really work. So it might just be time to try a new method.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that actually hit home with me really hard too. And especially just hearing you say that right now, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about about a year or so ago where I was getting a lot of flack from a bunch of people in my life because I kept referring to myself as lazy. And they're like, dude, you're doing like, at that point I was doing like I was doing podcast and or radio shows like 4 times a week. I was single-handedly managing the Facebook page for the Seeds of Liberty, and like, so putting out so I was making memes daily. I do all the editing and stuff for most of the shows that we do and everything like that. So I was just like and I was also finding time to get in like day-long debates on Facebook and other social media sites. And I was constantly doing all this stuff. And then when I would tell people I was lazy, they were like, dude, you're insane. You're constantly doing things. But in my mind, I was doing exactly what you're talking about. I was being the procrastinator there was other things that I knew on some level were more important, but I was putting them off. But I could at least admit it to myself by saying I was lazy, but I was actually, I think in some instances, I was actually looking for the reassurance from others that I wasn't, because as long as they could tell me I was busy doing all these things, it was kind of like, maybe I'm not that lazy. And then once I was alone with my own thoughts again, I'd be like, oh, damn it, I'm still lazy. There's so many more important things I think I could be doing, or, you know, better things to better myself. And therefore, once I better myself, better my position. Once I better my position, I can better my kids' position, you know, in their lives and everything else. And it's like, yeah, why aren't you doing these things? Well, because when deep down, I'm beating the crap out of myself because yes, I am lazy in a certain extent, and I know
that's exhausting.
Yeah,
you're like, just the beating yourself up takes a lot of energy that you could otherwise be using to do constructive things. But I think ultimately what's going on is that those people around you can actually see the time you spend in your own head in conflict with yourself, because you know, as you've said, you've got high priority tasks that you're avoiding. So it's easy for people to look at what you do and go, wow, you know, that's great, you're editing those podcasts and things like that. But they're only seeing the front end. They're not seeing all the time where you're kind of having a Facebook debate when really you believe that you should be working on some project that's more important and that would be more fulfilling, but you just don't feel like you've got the emotional wherewithal to approach. And that is very depressing.
Yeah. It definitely can be, and you know, that was well, you mentioned. Well, there was a couple things I wrote down that I wanted to touch on too that you've already said, but then you just said that thing too, that what you just mentioned about the whole emotional thing. That was another aspect that I hadn't actually considered. The fact that it really is like it's a more of an emotional thing that you're kind of neglecting, and that's what it's manifesting in all these other ways. And I hadn't considered that. And once I read it, it was kind of like a smack to the head. It's like, oh yeah, duh, but makes perfect sense. But the other things I did want to mention before that we got too far away from it again, because you said something. You mentioned something before, and it's not what I wrote down. Actually, what I wrote down was that the quote the one from the book I think that you used multiple times. But I think you're right about it. The whole idea is something is better than nothing. Like doing something is better than doing nothing. The first time I read it, even though I was like the first time I came across it in the book, even though I was already like into the book and I was like, wow, this is really great stuff. Like I was instantly triggered. Because my first thought when I think of stuff like that is I immediately go to like government and like the thoughts of most people. It's like, we need to do something instead of just not doing anything about it. We need to do something. And like that is that always the case? But then I thought about it more, and like in this regard, yeah, you're right. Something is always better than nothing, because it as long as you're doing something, you're working towards creating a better, at least a different habit, even if it doesn't end up being one of your good habits that you end up picking up. At least you're changing your habits a little bit in trying to do so, and still even doing that is a positive step. So it's definitely better than doing something is definitely better than doing nothing in that situation. And I think that's going to be one of those new mantras I put in my head, and I try to get over the fact that it initially triggers me because I think of it in other regards. But I think because there's been times in my life that I've done that I actually, you know, I don't meditate, but I have mantras that I've gone through my life that I've just had to repeat to myself over and over and over again. and it actually has helped me get through a lot of situations. So I know that will work for me.
Great.
So I think I'm going to add that one.
Meditation isn't for everyone, so don't beat yourself about that.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
If you find yoga better than meditation, then yoga is a form of meditation ultimately. So, because I just say that because a lot of people think that there's something wrong with them because they can't get into meditation. It's like, if you can't get into meditation, try something else first for a couple of years. It's all the same principle of making things easy for yourself. And I just want to mention the context of saying doing something is better than doing nothing is important, because what I mean by that is, the reason why I put that in is a lot of procrastinators will think, oh, I should tidy up my room, and then they go, oh, but I've got much more important things to do. I've not finished my paper yet. I should be working on that, so I can't tidy my room at the moment. But then they don't work on their paper, and the room stays untidy for another week. And the reason why I say doing something is better than doing nothing, what I mean is, if there are constructive things that you want to do, there might be some really, really, really important stuff, but you're just not there yet. Don't let that be the excuse for not doing the less important stuff, because very often doing the less important stuff can be a ramp. Oh, now that I've typed up my notes, I didn't think I was going to type up my notes because that's kind of like the easy thing to do. Compared to something that's more important and more responsible. But now that I've typed up my notes, I've got a little bit more energy. I feel like, yeah, I've done something. And now I can use that energy to do something that would have been difficult before I typed up my notes. So that's really what I mean when I say doing something is better than doing nothing. I mean, right now, Trump bombing Syria, it would be better if he was doing nothing, right? Doing something isn't always better than doing nothing. But in the context it's intended, means doing something that accomplishes your goals, doing something that you've been putting off. Doing an easy thing that you've been putting off is better than doing no thing that you've been putting off.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I did want to mention quick, because I was thinking about it as you were describing the whole, dealing with reality versus how you wish things, kind of, it's basically dealing with the situation as it is versus how you want it to be, type of thing. I got a lot of that from reading the book, and I've heard you talk about this too. And it's slipping my mind if you have talked about this on any of the podcasts, because I don't recall hearing it, but I may just be forgetting at the moment. But as I listened to you reiterate those points again, something that popped into my mind is this does seem to flow a lot from the Stoic philosophy. Is that true? Has that had any are you into Stoicism at all? Have you studied that? Did this have any impact on your thinking on this? Because it really that whole idea of, because the core of Stoicism is basically, only do things that you can control within your own sphere of influence. Everything else put out of your mind, because you can't control it, and worrying about it and wasting time on it is completely unproductive, and you're never going to get anywhere. So that's what I thought of at first. I don't know if that's actually something that you drew from or not.
Well, I've not studied Stoicism very ardently. I mean to read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. I've even got the
how ironic
the book by Epictetus. Indeed, how ironic. There's so many books I would like to read.
Of course, I know.
But I would say what's been called the perennial philosophy, because they say it runs through all religions, or at least the best of all religions, which is more or less, all you have is the present moment. Like, accept the present moment as it is, and then you can deal with it constructively. It's in Stoicism, it's in Buddhism, it's in Taoism, it's in Hinduism. There's a quote in the New Testament where Jesus more or less expresses the same sentiment. So I am influenced somewhat by Eastern philosophy, I guess, and there is a crossover there with mysticism. Like, I'm not a Buddhist, but I know about Buddhism. I like Taoism. I like a lot of the concepts in that one in particular is called Wu Wei, which is it's hard. I'm not sure how they translate it, but I like to refer to it as the doing of not doing. It's like you do things the easiest way, like the river. The river flows down the mountain. It finds the nice lowest path. It finds the lowest path. It doesn't work hard. If it comes to a stone, it flows around it. It doesn't fight with the stone. And that's a principle, I guess, from Taoism that kind of has found its way into the book, which is like, try and fight with yourself less. Try and work with yourself more. And if I say that to you, you can go, "Oh, that sounds like a really good idea. I'll try and work with myself less and fight with myself more." I mean, no, that's not what I meant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the great thing about the book, if I may say so, is that it gives you lots of practical ways of doing that. Because that sounds very satisfying philosophically. The idea behind Stoicism, which is you focus on what you can change, you work on what you can change, and you accept what you can't change, right? That's a very well put philosophy. But how to apply that philosophy in day-to-day life is a much more complicated question. And you could give people lots of examples of methodologies for being better and better at accepting what they can't change and being better and better at working with what they can change. And I guess my book's one of those. You know, it's going to help you to work with yourself more and fight with yourself less.
Yeah. I too am a fan of Taoism, and I really enjoyed what you said about being in the moment and enjoying the task at hand and not focusing on what else you should be doing instead. And it also goes back to the emotional aspect that you mentioned, where a lot of us tend to simply avoid the things that give us anxiety instead of doing the things we actually enjoy.
Yeah, it's hard not to avoid the things that give us anxiety, and kind of like my prescription is start with things that make you only very slightly anxious and get used to doing them until they're not so anxiety provoking anymore. You're actually expanding your comfort zone. You know, I mentioned in the book something about, like, we come back to writing, you know, if you're not ready to, if you've been procrastinating over writing your novel for 2 years, maybe you're not ready to write a novel. Maybe you should start on things like short stories or poems, or, you know, something that's of more moderate or minimal difficulty until that comes within your power. And when that comes within your power, it'll be easier for you to work on something more challenging. Like going to the gym, you know, no one expects they're going to be able to bench press their own weight after 2-3 weeks in the gym. It's like you work with the weight that's just slightly outside your comfort zone, and by doing so, you build up your muscles. Well, this is a gym for your willpower muscles, your productivity muscles. That's what the book is. It teaches you the exercises.
Yeah, it all goes in baby steps. And I love your quote, which is related to that, where you say, "Mile by mile, life's a trial, but inch by inch, life's a cinch." I love that quote.
Yeah,
cool quote.
It is a really good one. I know Danilo picked up on that one too. He really enjoyed that. I love when I hear him chuckle when he says something and then laughs afterwards. So I know it really struck him. But yeah, it's true though. It's one of those simple things that, like, a lot of people, you know, myself, you know, I'll speak for myself. I lost sight of a long time ago, even though in the back of my mind I should know better. That I know that it's so much, because I have.
The thing is,
oh, go ahead.
Saying you should know better or saying I'm such an idiot, this is exactly the problem. This is what creates our procrastination, because we think we're better than we are. You know, Jordan Peterson once gets asked, you know, by someone, what the hell is wrong with me? And he says, well, lots of things, probably, because there's lots of things wrong with most people. You know, most people will come and go, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you just have a problem. He says, yeah, there's probably tons of things wrong with you. There's tons of things wrong with most people. So these things like, oh, I should know better, that is the thinking the fact is you might just be so stupid and incompetent that you don't know better yet, but, you know, you might be learning to know better. And And if you can accept that, that you are where you are, that's part of the art. Don't get me wrong, I'm not there yet. I do a lot of self-criticism, so maybe this is just something that I need to remind myself of too. But it hurts me when I hear you call yourself an idiot.
Oh, well, I will try to refrain from doing that in your presence anymore, because I would hate to hurt you. I would hate to hurt you, Andy. But you're right though. I think part of it for me is, and I've said this a lot over the years, is I'm one of those people who was always told from a very young age that I was too smart for my own good type of thing. Phrase used very often in my life, and a lot of times in my life. I'm sure that the more I think about it, and I'm going to, like I said, I want to read the book again, and I want to absorb even more of this, and I think I want to start trying to implement a lot of these techniques and strategies just to see if what happens, because part of me knows that I do know a lot of this stuff, and I have forgotten it, but. If I do, instead of keep beating myself up, you're probably right. I think that's the thing that's probably been missing for me, because I know I'm not stupid in these regards. Like I know for a fact I know these things, but I just keep making some of the same stupid mistakes and procrastinating the same ways. But maybe if I now take a look at this from the emotional angle and go, maybe it is because I keep beating myself up over it. Maybe I should stop. That hopefully will help, because if it hasn't changed yet, then obviously I need to do something different. And like I said, the emotional aspect in general, I hadn't considered before. Like everything else, as I read it, these things would smack me in the face, because I was like, oh yeah, makes sense. Or I did know that, I had just forgotten it temporarily type of things. But the emotional thing, right, that was the one that hit me. I was like, this is the one I've definitely never considered. And that probably has something to do with my overly logical nature. I mean, I've talked about this openly before. I'm what is referred to as an Asperger-tarian, a name a couple of us made up for ourselves, because there's like a stereotype about libertarians and anarchists that they're very they could be like on the autism spectrum type of thing because of their adherence to logic, and they seem to be heartless. That's how a lot of people view libertarians from the outside. I am one of those people who actually was, though. I actually do have Asperger's as far as I know, and I was never officially diagnosed, but I was told by 3 people in the industry as I met them throughout my life. One of their first questions to me was, "Have you ever been tested?" Right. So, and it fits with everything else, because I had to teach myself empathy at a later stage in my life, because I just didn't have any, and I thought there was something wrong with me, but apparently it was just I was just kind of born different. But yeah, I overlook the emotion because of all that. I tend to overlook the emotional aspects in a lot of things, and again, not to the extent of triggering me, but another term you used in the phrase, a term you used in the book a couple of times, which is relatable to this too, the whole woo-woo thing. You mentioned that a bunch of times, and Shane, that's Shane. That's my nickname for Shane, has been for a long time, because
he accuses me of being woo-woo.
Oh, I mean it with love, because I know. We've had discussions about a lot of this stuff. I'm not as close-minded as I used to be. But just that whole idea, a lot of these things, I guess in the back of my mind, I still attribute to not that it's woo, but anything emotional, anything like that. It's I don't need to deal with that because I'm the logic guy. So put that to the side. So yeah, I definitely overlooked that a lot. And I think that for me personally, I think that's probably right now after the first reading, it's probably the biggest takeaway for me, is that I really think I need to focus more on that, because I definitely don't. And the most regular emotion that comes out of me is anger. There's a reason the Angry Young Man by Billy Joel made my theme song by the time I was 8, and it's stuck with me ever since.
Oh, I love that song.
Oh, one of my favorite songs of all time.
What a great freaking song. Yeah, I mean, the piano playing in the Angry Young Man by Billy Joel, and such a recognizable character as well. What a great song. People should check that out if you've not heard it before. But yeah, so if you're the logic guy, it's easy to try and steamroll over your emotions to get things done, but it won't work, because you've basically got there, you're trying to pull a horse when the horse is digging its heels in, and the emotions are more powerful than your logic is. The Scottish philosopher David Hume said, reason is and should always be, I can't remember the exact quote, the slave of the passions. And what he meant by that is that that you use your logic, you use your reason to fulfill your passions. Without any passion, without any emotion, what exactly is your reason there to do? I mean, at the end of the day, you want something, you desire something, and you move towards that goal. That's what organisms do. From the most tiny singular-celled organisms move towards food and away from toxins. And what is that? Our higher desires, the desire to write a book, the desire to publish a podcast, other than a passion, then you use your reason to attain. So if you need to deal with the emotional, and I guess I could be guilty or indicted of being ultra rational at times and things like that. There was a need for me to write this book in a way to catalogue what I'd learned, and the reason why people can read it and go, wow, man, it's like you've read my mind, is because I catalogued what was going on in my mind somehow over years, and somehow I managed to put it into 25,000 words. It's quite proud of it, I have to say. When I read it back, I like the way it reads. It reads very nicely.
Yeah, well, I for one think you definitely should be proud of it, because it definitely does. Everything, pretty much, like, I don't, any of the podcasts I've heard you talk about this or anything I've listened to you talk, and now that it was one of the really handy things about the book, aside from the links that you put in there, like you were talking about earlier at the end of the book, the fact that you stuck links for specific videos of yours that connected with things that you were talking about in the book. Like, I was able to sit there on my phone and go straight from reading to, like, oh, I'll take a break for a second and watch this 10-minute video on 1.5 speed, and boop, right back to reading the book again, which was great.
Great.
But yeah, they definitely, like I said, I think it's, people definitely would get a lot out of this. Definitely worth reading, and you should be proud, because you talked about the fact that it took you a while to hone the ability to write the fact that you're so proud now of how you wrote this book, because you used to be very, you had to tone, you had to get, you're a very verbose writer at first, and you had to, like, kind of pare everything back and get yourself down to where you could write less complex sentences, I think, as you put it.
Yes, definitely.
Which is, again, is another thing that hit home with me, because that's always been my problem. I write very similarly to the way I speak. And I tend to speak in very long, complex sentences. I don't, like, I'm not trying to sound like I've been accused of trying to talk down to people and try to sound smarter than other people. It's really not the case. It's just the way I learned on my own, so that's how I speak, and I don't mean anything by it, but I write the same way. So there was, like, when I have one piece that I wrote recently that I'm, like you were talking about, like, actually being able to read back that and be extremely proud of what you wrote. Like, I have one piece recently that I published that I'd actually been working on, talking about procrastination for over 2 years, and it was only like it was only like a 8,000 word essay or something, or 10,000 words. I don't even, like, maybe 4,000 words. I don't remember. It wasn't, like, super long, but it was something that just took me, way too long to actually put out. And but I can look back at that and be proud of it. But even still, I know that I still have those problems where, because a couple, including actually Danilo is one of them, but a couple of friends that are writers that I really trust, I gave it to them first and said, please be brutal. I haven't written in a long time, so don't sugarcoat it. Like, tell me, I want to improve. I want to get better. Please, tell me, help me here. And my one buddy, Paul Gordon, friend of the show, been on a bunch of times, great guy. He actually was probably the most critical, which I really appreciated. But that was one of the things he kept hitting me with, is like, dude, he's like, I know what you mean, and I know how you think. So this coming from you, this makes perfect sense to me. But other people reading it, it's just way too, he's like, I don't want to say long-winded, but it's long-winded, that type of thing. And it's like, yeah, man. But you, like you said, just doing things like getting in the habit of starting writing, even if it's just writing for the sake, just to be writing every day, so you get in that habit. Once you get to that point, okay, now you can start now you're in the habit of writing. Now you can start working on the writing that you do, and you hone it and you hone it and you hone it. And because you've already made it easier for yourself. And again, that's something I know I need to get over, because you were talking about before about, if you've put that novel, you've been have that idea for a novel for 2 years, you haven't got anywhere with. I have a book that I've been, a book that I was going to write. I started talking about it a couple of months ago, and it's something that would only end up being around the length of yours. So not like I'm not talking about writing a novel. I'm talking about writing a book, but I haven't even written an outline yet, because I haven't gotten myself in the habit of writing again. I just these days I write because I'm on Steam it. So I've tried to start blogging more, but it's essentially when something strikes me, I'm like, oh, I'll write right now because something's in my head. But other than that, it's not a routine. And again, this should, like I said, I'm trying not to call myself an idiot, but it should. I believe that this should be common sense to me, because I do know this, that the way my mind works, I actually do work much better if I'm in a routine. I know I'm so much more productive, but I've just gotten away from it for so long and given every excuse in the book. First, it was my business, then it was my kids, and I'm always placing the blame. Oh, well, I have to do these things. Yes, it's true. Yeah. I do have these things to do, but that shouldn't stop me from doing these other things. The only thing that is stopping me is me. Especially if they're
high priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you need to know what your values are, and if it's something that you value, it needs to get some kind of precedence, even if that's just 20 minutes to start with. Writing for 20 minutes. If you write for 20 minutes a day for 2 weeks without missing a day, you'll be incredibly proud of yourself. And if you can manage to do it for 6 weeks, it'll start to get a lot easier. It'll start to become some part of your routine. And again, if you apply the method of making it easy, which is at first, you just make sure you write that before you go to bed, any time of the day. But see, once you're in a routine, you're 4, 6, 8 weeks into it, you've been writing for 20 minutes a day, you rarely miss a day, then you're like, okay, well, I've got this writing for 20 minutes a day. Right now, I want to make sure that I do it before midday or something like that. Well, obviously, if people work regular jobs, that's not going to. But I'm just expressing the principle. So yeah, it might just be that you're not ready in terms of confidence-wise to write your short book. And what you could do is, some of the things you're going to cover in the book, you could start writing short articles that cover bits of the information in the book, so that when you come to write the book, you can steal bits of your own work, put it in new words, and repackage it. There's all sorts of ways to make things easy for yourself. And that's the way to do it, man. Make it easier for yourself.
Exactly.
Nothing I love more than plagiarizing myself.
Right.
Yeah. I love how it's not necessarily about finishing something, but just getting started. And then once you've gotten started, you get the experience, and that gives you the confidence to do it again.
That is the most difficult thing for most people getting started, which is why I recommend, if there's something you want to do, you make a practice of getting started each day, because you just need to get used to getting started. Like, if I start working on another book, I will not be thinking about finishing the book. That's what I used to do before I had a book finished. I was thinking, I need to finish a book. Like, when am I going to have one finished? And it took me years. Whereas the thing is, now it's like my only concern will be to make sure that I do a certain amount of writing every day, and it'll be finished when it's finished. I built up a routine of writing for half an hour a day first, for over 6 months. And then when I was writing in this book, I did 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's no problem for me. It felt very natural by this point, because I'd worked on something until it became easier. So once I had something to focus my mind on, it was easier to increase the amount of time. But it wouldn't have been easier to do 2, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, if I hadn't had the discipline of writing for 30 minutes a day for over 6 months, rarely missing a day. Yeah, sometimes I missed a day, but I got back on the wagon.
Well, yeah, and because like you said earlier, once you get to a certain point, it has started to form as a habit. So so even if you do miss a day, it's not like, oh my God, I got to start all over again tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you like, oh, I took a day off, no big deal. Now I'm right back in the swing of things. Which also ties all the way back into the beginning of the conversation about your upcoming trip and how you're finally at a point where you can say, hey, I want to take a trip for purely leisure, and because you're not super concerned about falling back into all these bad habits just because you take a little time off because you've worked so hard to put yourself to alter your life into to this point, and now be in this position that it's like, oh yeah, I know I'm confident that I can afford to have a little leisure time and actually enjoy it, because that's another thing you reference multiple times in the book about the fact that a lot of, even if you're doing things, even if you're trying to be productive and then you take time off, a lot of times you're not actually enjoying your leisure time because you're so focused, like you're still thinking about the other thing that you're not doing or that you could be doing. So like your leisure time ends up being more wasteful than not, because you end up more drained from it because you've been worrying about things the entire time. And I can definitely relate to that too. So all great stuff. But I am looking at the time, and I don't want to keep you too long because I know it's a lot later on your side of the pond right now. So we should probably get closing out. But first of all, thank you once again for coming on. This was so much fun. I am so glad that we got a chance, not just to have you on the show, but actually have this conversation. Because like I said, I'm taking this as a therapy session for myself, and I'm really pulling a lot out of this. So before we get going, though, do you have anything you want to say in closing? And of course, plug away once again.
Well, first I want to thank you guys so much for having me on the show, but not just for that, for your genuine interest in my work. It's lovely to speak to people who are like, oh yeah, I liked your book, and bring up the things, because everyone has said different quotes or different parts of the book affected them, and it's very touching, very flattering to know that this is a real conversation. It's not like you're some radio host that interviews 10 people a day and has been given a spec of what to ask. The fact that you guys actually took the time out of your day to read it, that's really awesome, and you asked me questions from the heart, so thank you very much for that. If you want to keep up with my work at home, the best way is just download the book, beyourselfandloveit.com/do-it, because inside the ebook there are links to Scottish Liberty Podcast, Be Yourself and Love It podcast, which is my personal development podcast, link to my YouTube channel where I've got very short videos that might be of some benefit. Everything is in the book. So just download the book, beyourselfandloveit.com/do-it, and inside that book you find what else I'm up to, and whatever you're interested in, check it out. Whatever you're not interested in, don't. What else can I say? Excellent. Thank you so much once more.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Quite welcome, Anthony. Shane, you have anything you want to say before we close out?
Sure. I just wanted to say that Antony should be proud of this book, because I really feel that it's kind of a masterpiece of sorts. And I'm not only going to reread it again, but I'm going to recommend it to my friends and family as well.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do the same. And I may just actually send it to some people.
Yeah, please. Yeah, same at home. If you know anyone who could benefit from it, pass it on. The more the merrier.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So once again, thank you so much, Anthony. This has been great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been the Seeds of Liberty podcast. All of our information can be found at solpodcast.org. If you would like to contribute to our cause over here, of course, #please donate. The Patreon is still up and running. Thank you again to all our patrons who continue to help us out every month. We really, really appreciate it. I do apologize. We missed an episode last week because of things going on in my life, but I promise that 2 will be out this week, so we'll be all caught up again. And also check out the additional perks that we've added if you haven't already, because we've started offering more stuff, and there's opportunities for listeners to record live and a bunch of extra episodes we've been putting out. So thank you, everybody, once again. We will catch you next week. Peace.
This is Daryl W. Perry, host of Free Talk Live. This November, I'll be running in the world's biggest and most popular marathon, the New York City Marathon, and I've accepted a spot on Team Innocence Project because I'm a passionate supporter of their work. Since 1989, 353 people in the United States have been exonerated by DNA testing, including 38 who pled guilty to crimes they did not commit, and 20 of whom served time on death row. The Innocence Project provided direct representation or critical assistance in 180 of these cases. With your help, the Innocence Project can help even more people who have been wrongly convicted. As part of Team Innocence Project, I am raising awareness about wrongful convictions and raising funds to help free the innocent. I've already paid the race registration fees. However, to secure my spot on Team Innocence Project in the New York City Marathon, I need to raise $3,500 by November 1st. You can support the Innocence Project and help me secure my race entry by going to run.freetalklive.com.